Go to Revelation chapter 20.
We were just reading that, Ben, yesterday.
Yeah, and we're going to make sense of Revelation 20 tonight, and then this is going to be our intro.
It already makes sense.
Yeah, not really, not yet, unless you're Amillennial. You believe we're in the Millennium Kingdom?
I don't believe we're in any. No, oh, hell no.
Okay, so then it doesn't make sense yet. So let me make sense for it. Ready?
Makes sense to me.
It's going to make sense because once you answer this question, you're going to realize we're at the end of days. Ready?
Hit it.
Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit, and a great chain, and he seized the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the pit, and shut it and sealed it over him, so that he may not what? What can't he do anymore?
Deceive
the nations.
Deceive the nations any longer.
Okay, go on.
Go back to John. Jesus said about Satan, now is Satan cast down, and he's bound. This happened in Christ's coming. He said that when he was here in John chapter 12.
Are you saying that the nations are not being deceived any longer at this current moment?
Oh, let me ask you a question. You ready? And here's going to set the tone of what we believe about eschatology. What does it mean to deceive the nations?
That they are deceived.
What does that mean?
That they do not know what is not deceived.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what it means, right?
We
just like, oh, of course he's deceiving us. Okay, but what does it mean in the text?
Have
an answer?
Well, the nations are people. It's deceiving people.
Is there a definition in the New Testament that you're trying to get us to?
Yes, absolutely.
So show us the definition of deceived that you would like us to quote.
Let's go just a few verses down because we like to stay in context, right? So go to verse 7.
Yeah. Okay.
Verse 7.
We skipped over a lot of good stuff though.
Yeah, but a lot of good stuff is irrelevant to the 1,000 years.
I disagree. And then I saw thrones, and seated on them were those who had authority to judge and committed. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Jesus, for the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or its image or had received its mark on their forehead or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. And the rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. That's happened?
Yes. And we'll get into how that happened. Yes, exactly. But we're going to answer the deceiving question first, right? Because that's what we asked. What does it mean to deceive the nations? Because that's going to be the sign of the end. You got to remember that. He's going to be bound from deceiving the nations. Then we better have a pretty darn good idea of what it means.
That is going to be a sign of
a millennium kingdom.
1,000 years. Okay, go on.
And going to be the end of 1,000 years. The deceiving of the nation is going to be the sign. That's verse 7. Let's go to verse 7. And when 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will come out to deceive the nations. So think about that. He's going to not be allowed to deceive the nations.
Where's the definition of deceive?
It's going to follow right after. And then he's going to be allowed to deceive the nations. See how that works? So for a period of time, he's not going to be allowed to deceive. So now we have to identify what does it mean to deceive the nations. It answers right afterwards. And to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, which is flat. Yes, your flat theory. It's going to go to the corners of the earth. In other words, a globalization. Okay, it's a global thing, and it says this. And he will be at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for what? The battle. Here it is. Their number is like the sand of the sea, and they marched up over the broad plain of the earth. So it's an earth thing. It's a global thing. And surrounded the camp of the saints, which is Christians, and the beloved city, which is Israel. Okay, why does that all make sense? Because what Satan cannot do right now, and he hasn't been able to do since Christ, is to have a global assault on Christianity and Israel. He did pockets of it in China, or he did pockets of it here, he did pockets of it there, but it was never a global thing. It was never a worldwide gathering of all the heavenly hosts, of all the powers and the principalities, of everything, gathering them from all the four corners of the earth. All the nations are now marching towards the Christians and his holy city, Israel. See how that works?
Yeah,
he can't do that right now.
But this is round 3. This is also described earlier in Revelation. So I don't. Why do you think we're in the millennium and not going through it in the tribulation or
because
pre-trib?
Satan can't do it right now. He's not doing it. He's bound from doing it.
You haven't given me a definition of deception.
That right now he cannot convince the nations to do a worldwide assault on the Christians in Israel. That's the
So
deception.
your definition of deceive is just how it relates to an assault on Israel?
According to this text, yes, because he's going to deceive them to wage war against the Christians and the saints. So that's what he's going to be released to do.
It says the pit, he will be thrown into the pit and shut it, seal it
Yeah.
over him, so that he may not deceive the nations any longer. So
Right.
is he currently deceiving the nations?
Is in what regards? For the end times war? No, he can't. He's going to be released to do that. And at the end of, now hold on. So to answer your question, he might have been released now, and now we're seeing the results of it, where now the nations are slowly starting to rise up.
Yeah, but this is described earlier in Revelation as well, where there is Gog and Magog getting together against Israel, and they go to war against Valley of Megiddo, all that.
Right. Exactly. That already took place.
When?
God, oh, that's already historically documented. The first Gog and Magog battle, it already happened, the battle. That's taken place the first time historically.
Okay, and
the
then it
battle
happens
of Megiddo,
again with Gog and Magog.
Now it's using the language.
So the exact same. 2 minutes.
No, now it's using the language here of painting a picture of a worldwide.
That's your interpretation, that it's just
right.
allegorical or metaphorical to.
Of course, because everything in Revelation 20 is allegorical, metaphorical, unless you believe there's a bottomless pit, which is not really a pit because it's bottomless.
I do.
So what's he doing? He's spinning downward for 1,000 years? What's he doing in the bottomless pit?
I think there's dimensions, and that they're using human language to describe that.
So you just agreed it's allegorical. So you're saying human language, which means allegory. It's
well, I do believe that they are using human language to describe truths that are and concepts that were not perceivable to
which is known as allegory.
Humans. Okay. 1,000 years doesn't mean 1,000 years. We know that.
It could or couldn't. I agree.
It doesn't. 1,000 years in the Bible never means 1,000 years. It's a long period of time.
Right.
The number of 1,000 is just a long period of time.
That would be the interpretation, right? So then you're already taking an allegorical.
No, just historically, like the word 1,000 years or 1,000 in the Bible means a lot.
Right. Again, yes, it could. And it's not definitive, but I agree with you. I don't think it's a literal 1,000 years, because I'm no longer approaching this text literally, because you just did a figurative approach.
There's also not a key, it's not like what we have. There's also not a chain that holds Satan. Okay, so we know that. But the words Gog and Magog are territorial. So I guess you could say that from an overarching perspective, is he not using geographic language? He's just using Gog and Magog specifically
because Gog and Magog was yes, and it's a battle, but he's also attacking the four corners of the earth, which he has. Again, that's a different language. That's a worldwide thing. Gog and Magog is like what, 30 miles, 40 miles a city. It's not that. You're not talking about the United States of America here. We're talking about Gog and Magog, right?
Who cares about America? They suck.
But I'm just saying. So you're not talking about like Gog and Magog is going to be the plains of the destructions of the whole world. That's impossible. That's not what we're talking about.
No, but they could be the ones that lead this uprising.
I don't disagree with the leading. Gog and Magog can be part of it. It could be like Babylonian, right? Babylon doesn't exist today, but the Babylonian spirit exists today. The Babylonian mentality exists today, and Babylon exists today in a whole different sense than it did back then, right? So we approach it that way. But what we're seeing here is that at the end of the days, you're going to see a massive movement, which only is going to be ran by the demonic forces, Satan himself, to gather a worldwide global battle. That's what's going to happen at the end of days. We already see it in Revelation. It's an end times battle.
So where does this how does this account for previously in Revelation where it talks about Gog, Magog, Armageddon, Megiddo, all of that?
Yeah,
You're
that already
saying that
happened.
already happened.
Yeah,
Okay.
when you do that,
When did
I
that
did.
happen?
I forget the timelines. I can get you the materials, but if you look at the history
Just-
of Gog, Magog, and Megiddo, it already took place. But I can find it for you if you want.
So Israel got wiped out by Gog, Magog. There
Yes.
was a battle called Armageddon, like the world has never seen before.
Yes.
Destruction that the world
Yes,
has never
and
seen.
that's actually said 4 times in the Old Testament and again in the New Testament. So that never seen before and will never happen again is not new languages to the New Testament. That's probably the 4th time it was brought up in the Bible. First time was with Noah and Moses. That it's gonna be such a destruction to you. It has never been done, and it will never happen again. That happened in the Old Testament. God said that to Moses. He said it to Noah. He said it a 3rd time, and then Jesus uses the same language again in Matthew 24. That's not the only time Jesus ever used that language or God ever used that. It had never happened before and it'll never happen again. That's a universal language
did those events happen though and then never happen again?
Yeah, the flood never happened again.
Okay, so why do we think that then when Gog, Magog, and the destruction that comes at Megiddo, when he says like will never happen again, he was just kidding that time though?
No, because what Matthew 24, because if you're going to go to Matthew 24, when it says it never happened again, understand Matthew's perspective on who he's writing to. So Matthew is writing to a Jewish audience only.
I get it, and they would have picked up on that, right?
They would have picked up on that
that
language.
But you're just assuming he's being hyperbolic.
No, actually, in Matthew 24, he's clearly talking about the Second Temple period. And this is why you need to understand Revelation in the time period of the Second Temple period, in which Matthew 24 is the context.
Okay. I understand that Matthew 24 talks about the destruction of the temple, AD 70, all of that. We know this, the abomination of desolation, going into the temple, sacrificing a pig or erecting a statue of himself. We know this.
Yes.
That has happened. And then Matthew 24, after that happens, says, you know this, and then this will happen. So all of that happens, abomination, desolation, destruction of the temple, that all happens. And then it says, and all this other stuff happens, which that other stuff is much more closely associated to Revelation than what we saw happen at the destruction of the temple. So it could be an ongoing pattern of demonic destruction on this planet. I don't think that there is a one-time event where God's just like, I'm sorry, I don't think Matthew 24 points to just one event. I think it points to 2 events, right? I think it points to the destruction that was imminent for Jerusalem and the temple, and he describes those things to them. And then I think he alludes to a future event, probably in our timeline or our time frame here, because those same powers are at work and that same evil, destructive, demonic force is at work. But one day it culminates into a grander destruction, which is what I think is waiting, not what happened. Because Jerusalem getting destroyed and the temple getting destroyed, we've seen that before, and we've seen other destructions that were greater than that.
No, actually, in the history of mankind, what happened to Israel and Jerusalem in AD 66 to 73 never happened in the history of Israel's.
I mean, 1 million people got killed by the Roman Empire. I mean, you could argue that the Holocaust killed like 16.
No, again, you have to go back to what happened in AD 66, 73. People were eating their babies.
The Russians did that when they were starving, like.
But again, so when you understand the language of God telling Israel, in your history, this has never happened and will never happen again in your history. Not what happened worldwide. That's irrelevant.
I think the Jews ate children during the Holocaust.
No, not again. You have to look at what happened in AD 66 to 73. I don't think you did your study in 66, 73 just yet. You need to read Josephus's war on the Jewish war and understand that time period, nothing could compare to it.